Hello again, I'm Robert Fithin, and I hadn't planned on making a vinyl finds video this quickly after I just did one a couple videos ago, but that one was more, I guess, Halloween themed, and so I got plenty of stuff that didn't really fit into that one, plus which I wanted to show that I finally did get the Rolling Stones Hackney Diamonds St. Louis Cardinals baseball version. Thank you so much to everybody who's been asking about it and inquiring. Very gracious of you. But yes, it finally did arrive after all of that. If you don't really know what I'm talking about with the debacle of all this, check out some of my previous videos with this being delayed by Universal, with it being then shipped to the post office and going all over the country from North Carolina to Texas, back to North Carolina to St. Louis area where I am, back to North Carolina again, back to St. Louis. It just was all over the place. I didn't know if I would ever actually get this, and then when I did, what condition it would be in, but thankfully it did arrive intact. No bent corners, no split seams or anything like that. I'm still kind of, I'm still not crazy about this artwork. Just the basic white kind of minimalist background there with the logo with the STL there on top, but it is, I guess, kind of a collector's thing, and so I wanted to get this one. And I think I'm the only one that actually really likes the cover art of the original, just the retail regular version. I really like the pick through the heart and it's shattering with the hand under it. I think it's one of their greatest album covers since probably the 80s or even earlier than that. Am I the only one that thinks that?
Yes, Robert. It's just you.
I'm getting that impression, yes. But yeah, I really like the new cover art. Hackney Diamonds, I think I mentioned this in the other video, maybe not. It's apparently a slang for the pieces of glass that are left over when like a robber or something breaks the glass window of a storefront or something and shattered glass is on the ground. Those are Hackney Diamonds, I guess. But anyway, I've said, I kind of reviewed this before, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. And at this point, everybody's talked about this album, but great album, very energetic. Mick Jagger singing like he's just giving it full throttle. No laziness here, no kind of going through the motions. Sounds very, like I said, energetic, very dedicated to what they're doing. Sounds like the Rolling Stones, doesn't sound like they're trying to be cutting edge or change stuff up for the new times or go for a new audience or whatever. So it's great. Angry is a really basic sounding opener. I mean, it's just a really basic sounding song, but there are some real gems on here. And there's a lot of variety on here too. Of course, you got the Sweet Sounds of Heaven that has Lady Gaga and Stevie Wonder. She's kind of countering his falsetto there, kind of, similar to Mary Clayton. People are saying that it sounds like Gimme Shelter, I guess. I'm starting to see that now and hear that now. Does not sound like Gimme Shelter. It's not even the same time signature. It doesn't sound like that at all. It just has a female vocalist sharing vocals with Mick Jagger. It doesn't sound like Gimme Shelter. Great Depending on You with the great line, too young to die, too old to lose. I thought that was... It's like, yeah, amen to that, brother. Bite My Head Off is kind of a rockin' Rolling Stones, kind of silly lyrics. Paul McCartney on bass on that one. But yeah, a lot of great stuff on here. Like I said, very, very lively. They don't sound like they're going through the motions. It's a great Rolling Stones album. Obviously not Let It Bleed or, Sticky Fingers or something like that. This is the Rolling Stones 80 years old in 2023, kind of way out of their era, but it blasted through my expectations. I will say that. I was really just getting that thinking, I'll get the new Rolling Stones and yeah, I'll get the Cardinals version. At least it'll be a collectible thing. I'm not expecting much. It's going to be Voodoo Lounge Part 3 or, Bridges to Babylon or whatever. But no, this is great and definitely better than those two albums. The vinyl itself doesn't sound terrific, though. Streaming this, digital wins this one. Kind of flat sounding on the record. I don't know if everybody's having that experience. Also picked this one up. So glad I did. This was almost like a grail to me. Toots and the Maytals and Funky Kingston. This is from 1975 because it's the American version of this. They kind of did, Chris Blackwell, the owner of Island Records, kind of did what he did with the Bob Marley ones, kind of took a Jamaican album, flourished it up a little bit for the American market, and then released it a year or so later. So this is actually recorded in 1972, released in Jamaica in 73, and then released and remixed for the American market in 1975, changed around the track listing, took a few songs off, put a few different songs on. So this is the American version, and glad to finally have this. This is not easy to find for a bargain, that's for sure. And I did get this in a small collection, so Glad that I got it that way. Otherwise, this is like a 50, 60, I don't know, $100 album or something like that. Especially, I'm finding out that there's a, if you get the one with the blue lettering here, like I have, it's pretty sought after. But yeah, this is authentic Jamaican music. This kind of music has been done 100 times over at this point. So if you're hearing this for the first time now, you're thinking, yeah, okay, it's reggae music. But this guy was, right there before, right there with Bob Marley before it all exploded in America and everybody starts doing reggae. In fact, I think he's credited with coming up with the term reggae. So you can't get much more authentic than that. Great selections on here. He sings with so much heart. It really propels him above, a lot of the other music that sounds similar to this. Although there is a remake of John Denver's "Take Me Home, Country Road" on here. West Jamaica. I've listened to this about 3 times. The other 2 times I skipped over it. Skipped over that song. But yeah, this is terrific. Great reggae album. Like I said, very authentic, right from the original source. And I was always wondering whether it's Toots and the Maytals or Toots and the Maytals. I was never quite clear on that. Fred Hibbert and the Maytals, we'll call it. But yeah, is it Toots like you toot a horn, or is it Toots like Tootsie Roll, or hey Toots? That's something that people don't really say too much anymore. Toots. I'm not sure, but great cover art on that as well on the Mango label. Love to see that label. Also got a Japanese pressing. I don't have too many of these, but I had to get some metal on a Japanese pressing because my other Japanese pressings, like the Beatles and whatever, they're classic rock type stuff. This is my first metal, 80s metal Japanese release. And that's a whole other ball game. And sounds great, especially for 80s metal on CBS. I've never heard the U.S. pressing of this, but I'm assuming it's got a lot of sibilance because that's the name of the game with CBS labels in the 80s, especially the mid-late 80s. They really started using some lower quality vinyl, recycled vinyl, whatever. Really started mastering their stuff kind of haphazard, just from my own ears. I didn't read that or resourcing that from somebody else. My own ears told me that. Like, why are these records? I remember hearing he's in the 80s and thinking, why are these records sounding like this? And it turns out later I found out CBS was actually using cheaper vinyl and didn't really care. The CD was out. They maybe been trying to push everybody to buy compact discs, making the records sound less than stellar. And then, you can get the compact disc player if you don't like the way records sound. It's like, I don't like the way these records sound. But this sounds great. And of course, it's Accept. This is probably their second best album. It's No Balls to the Wall. That's an absolute classic all the way through. There's some great stuff on here, and I love Udo Dirk Schneider's vocals coming through again. I just absolutely love the way he sings with his whole German thing, just unabashed. And the awkward kind of English titles on here, like "Screaming for a Love Bite." Is on here, and bound to Fail, the final track. We're bound to fail. Yeah, it's like that. That's something you don't hear very often. Love the cover art on here as well. Of course, it has the obi on the side. That's very important to have this obi strip on here. I have a question though. If an American album has an obi on the side, like this Betty Davis reissue or this Madonna album from 1988. If an American album has a side belt on it like this and it's all in English, is it still an obi? Or is it just a side belt? Because these are in Japanese, so I don't know if that counts as an obi or not. That's a question to ponder. I also have another question about Japanese pressings because I'm relatively, I don't have a lot of these. I know people that collect Japanese pressings and have 100 of them or whatever. I got a question. I've always heard that Japanese pressings lack bass. And out of the few that I have, I don't ever hear that. I don't hear a lack of bass. What I always hear is a lot of full front sound, like a lot of mid-range and just a lot of upfront type of sound. Almost, it can sound a little bit brittle at times, but that's what I hear. I don't hear a lack of bass. So I'm not really sure what that's all about. I looked it up and there's 3 main explanations as to why these lack bass, which again, I don't think they do, but apparently there are a bunch that do. They lack bass because A, the Japanese have better audio equipment. And, then we're talking about the 80s here. This is an original from 1985. So they have better audio equipment, so they don't need extra bass on the records because the audio equipment takes care of that. Unlike the US where, you had to have it on the record because your stereo system's not that good. Explanation number 2. The Japanese are not obsessed with bass like Americans are. Now that one's actually more believable because Americans, especially in the 80s and especially in the 90s, seem to be obsessed with bass. All these people riding around in their like mini trucks with these 5 subwoofers on the back. The windows are shaking. They keep having to go to Safe Auto to get their windows replaced because they're rattling right out of the back of the truck. It sounds like they're not even listening to music. They're just listening to a drum machine. Remember people like that? And then you had these boom boxes and whatever, these mini stereos that had the mega bass button. You could just push it and it would just start blasting out this bass. Didn't matter the tone. Didn't matter if that was the way the song was supposed to sound. You just wanted bass. So you just push this button and here would come this bass just overpowering everything. I used to have a couple of those boombox, and I never pushed that button. I always thought it sounded completely obnoxious. I mean, maybe it worked for like club music or something, but if you're going to listen to rock or pop or something like that or country, it certainly didn't. You wouldn't want the mega bass button on it. A lot of people did and thought it just sounded great. Now, the third explanation is the hilarious one. Japanese people the Japanese pressings don't have a lot of bass in them because in Japan, the walls are made of paper. And the bass would just rip the paper right out of place. The walls are made of paper in Japan, apparently. I have never been to Japan. Maybe somebody that's lived in Japan or has been to Japan can establish whether this is true or not. Are the walls in Japan made of paper? Because I understand that, they have dividing walls inside the house, like that would divide like a section of a room. Those are, they have rice paper on that. And they do have paper covering, the glass on some things for extra insulation. But I don't know if they just have paper walls that you can just, like you're going to break into somebody's house in Japan and it's like, okay, all right, we're in, guy. I don't think that happens. Like in that movie, The House Where Evil Dwells, I think that might have been something from like 100 years ago. But are any of those true? Which I don't think any of it's true anyway, because like I said, I don't think this lacks space. But anyway, Japanese pressings, I have all kinds of questions. The Obi strip, is it still an Obi strip if it's an American release? And of course, paper walls. Not Sugar Walls, that's Sheena Easton. And one more thing about the Accept album here, Metal Heart, from 1985, by the way. It was produced by Dieter Dierks, and he is a legendary German producer. Produced a lot of the Scorpions albums, just a lot of the German progressive rock, German hard rock. Excellent producer, had his own studio that was so incredible that people would fly from, the U.S. just to record in it. And I just found out that he actually was the guy behind the patent for the dual discs that were out in the 2000s. And that was the thing that Sony had them for a while, that one side was a DVD and the other side was a CD, and you could listen to the DVD part on your DVD player, and it would be in like 5.1 surround, and it would be DVD audio, and sometimes I'd have a few music videos on there, but it was one disc with a DVD side and a CD side. So Dieter Dierks, the producer of this album, the guy who holds the patent for the old dual disc. I don't think they made too many of those. It didn't really go over that well. You knew it wouldn't be a Vinyl Finds if I didn't have some nice kind of obscure psychedelic thing in there. The last video I don't think had one though, but this one sure does. This is the Idle Race, and the album is The Birthday Party from 1967. And if you don't recognize him on here, because I certainly do not, one of these guys is Jeff Lynne. Yeah, from ELO and from The Move. This is one of his early bands. This is probably, I think, the first major band that he was in. And this was not a popular album. Obviously more popular in the UK, but not popular at all in the US. They only released one album in the United States. I think they had 3 maybe in the UK. But this is definitely some nice psychedelic 1967 Paisley kind of flourished music. And it's exactly, that's pretty much it. It's the Sgt. Pepper era. Big time on this. But what makes it so interesting, besides, Jeff Lynne, is the way that he sounds on here. Just like Electric Light Orchestra later on, just like The Move, most of his vocals go through some sort of a distortion box. And it's interesting that some of the techniques he uses on this album are also used later on with Electric Light Orchestra. So this really just sounds like an early version of ELO. Some of the songs on here have a kind of a muffled kind of sound where they just roll off the high end altogether, and it kind of sounds like it's being played with dirty tape heads or something like that. But again, sort of a motif that happened in a few of the Move songs. So yeah, that's the sound of a few tracks on the Idle Races album. But it's definitely, like I said, got that kind of Paisley, psychedelic Sgt. Pepper kind of sound. All the great lyrics on here. It is called The Birthday Party. And so it does have some birthday-themed songs right up front. It actually just has a version where they just start singing Happy Birthday. And then they go into this song about a birthday that this woman throws for herself and no one shows up. And she's got to take down all the decorations and no one showed up to her birthday. It doesn't really sound like a very happy birthday party. I Like My Toys, about an older guy who still has his toys and still loves his toys. Gee, I'm sure a lot of us can't relate to that at all. Still got the records I had when I was 7 years old, still playing them. But yeah, he's got trains and toy cars and stuff, and his mom wants to disown him. And yeah, luckily my mother never did that to me for playing all my old records I had when I was a kid. But yeah, I Like My Toys. And the Lady Who Could Fly, I don't think she's on drugs. She's just literally flying all over the sky, just flying on the sky. There's also Pie in the Sky. It's that kind of thing. The Idle Race is what they're called, and the album is called The Birthday Party. And if you like Electric Light Orchestra and The Move and you want to hear something even earlier, go back further in time to the origins, check out the Idle Race and the album The Birthday Party. And this is in near mint condition. It looks like whoever had this played it a couple of times and then put it away. You never see albums this obscure, or at least, I mean, I don't. This obscure from the 60s and, great ones like this, and they're in just excellent condition. So I was really happy to find that. From a bit of an obscure album to a very well-known album, but kind of a different cover. This is actually Al Green and Let's Stay Together. I've never seen this before I got this. But yeah, definitely snatched this up. I'm like, what is this? Let's Stay Together, a huge album from 1972. Of course, it features a different cover on there with Al Green and that badass jacket he's got on. Where can I get a jacket like that? You are not going to find that at Kohl's, unfortunately. That is for sure. But yeah, this is a different cover. This, I believe, was released in 1978. And it says right here that it was re-released by popular demand. This was demanded. You know how they demand to release the hostages? This is a demand to release an Al Green album, and re-released it was with this different cover on there. Obviously, I like the original cover better with the badass jacket, but this I thought was just kind of a curio because I'd never seen this cover before. Same album, same track listing, same incredible songs on here. Al Green, one of the only ministers I want to listen to. And, of course, it has the big hit song, Let's Stay Together, on here. And, yeah, old time, lovin'. That's that kind of lovin' where there's no phone apps involved. That old time lovin's on here. So You're Leaving, another single on here. Wasn't as big as Let's Stay Together, but just about every song on here is great. This is one of my favorite Al Green albums. And I'm glad to have this kind of an alternate cover for this Let's Stay Together. This one, I think, like I said, from 1978, but still sounds great. So from the Reverend, we go to an album that starts off with a song called Orgasm Addict. Yes, it is Buzzcocks and Singles Going Steady. I have looked for this for quite a while, tried to find a decent version at a reasonable price. That is very difficult to do with this album. I actually saw a listing on Craigslist where this guy had a bunch of albums he was selling. Went to his house and he had like albums with covers with no record in them, records with no covers. Things with the wrong inner sleeve. It was, you think it's the inner sleeve, it's got the wrong record. Just mismatched stuff, and found the Buzzcocks cover with the wrong record in it. And other people were there, and they just gave up and left. I searched and searched and searched. Finally, I found the record and a different album cover. Hey, if you want the good stuff, sometimes you got to work. Got to work for it. Buzzcocks Singles Going Steady. I've had this on CD. Absolutely love this album. It's probably my favorite out of all of these, but it's not really fair because this is a compilation of their singles. All the A-sides are on side 1, and then the corresponding B-sides are on side 2. And yeah, Orgasm Addict is on here. I've always loved that song because it's just how I am. She's making out with school kids, winos, and heads of state. You even made it with a lady that puts the little plastic bunnies on the Christmas cakes, butcher's assistants, and bellhops. In all fairness, though, bellhops come to your room. So, there's that. Sometimes bellhop gets a tip. Sometimes bellhop gets the whole thing. Anyway, Orgasm Addict, What Do I Get? Great 1-2 song. And then I Don't Mind is awesome. I love that song. These are all like fast, little pop punk songs. This was years before pop punk got annoying with like Green Day and Blink 182. This is pop punk that you'd want to hear. So that would be the difference there. But yeah, every song on here is just a blast. Ever Fallen in Love is probably the most popular one in the U.S., but so many of these are great. And even the B-sides, a lot of these are magnificent as well. Autonomy is so great. I mean, that could have been an A-side. That's like one of my favorites on side 2 here. A very long album. It's got 16 tracks on it. Now, some of the tracks are like 2 minutes long, but there's also like a 6.5-minute song on here. So a very long record. The music almost goes all the way to the label. So, yeah, I would definitely suggest Buzzcocks for some just really fun, punchy, pop punk stuff that just, 2.5 minutes long bursts of just a lot of fun. This album is just a lot of fun. And I don't have any Buzzcocks albums, like the studio albums. I wonder if they're as good all the way through as this compilation is. So leave me a comment and let me know if you have any Buzzcocks albums, if they're as good as this Singles Going Steady compilation. We move from the Buzzcocks. Our journey continues now with solo Pete Shelley. He was in the Buzzcocks and went solo for this album called Homo Sapien. It is his debut from 1981. It's one of those albums where the UK version is different than the US version, so I'm glad I got the UK version. That's the one I wanted. That's why it took me so long to get it. You don't easily find the UK version without going online or something like that. So yeah, there are differences in the running order of the tracks, and also just different tracks. I mean, this has a song called Keats Song, another song called Pusher Man, not on the US version. The US one has Witness the Change, and Love in Vain, which are not on here. I prefer this one. But yeah, Homo Sapien, it starts it off the title track, kind of a poppy kind of song. Basically, it sets the stage for what kind of the theme of the whole album is. He's sort of isolated and looking for some sort of a connection with someone. And that kind of theme kind of goes on with all of these songs. It's a much more mature Pete Shelley than it's in the Buzzcocks. It's not as much fun. It does have upbeat music, but the lyrics are definitely not that fun, kind of quirky, almost silliness that's in some of the Buzzcocks songs. So it's definitely a whole different attitude on this. One of my favorites, though, is Just One of Those Affairs. And that's the song that actually sounds more like a Buzzcocks song, because he's just going off in his whole frantic, I mean, he literally sounds like that in parts of the song. It's just one of those affairs. So yeah, Pete Shelley, it does have some quirky parts, but definitely overall a much more morose kind of a theme. Like I said, he's basically searching, it sounds like, for some sort of connection in one way or another with other people. He's all by himself on the album. There's no backing vocals. I think he might back himself on a couple of songs. The whole musical landscape of this sounds very cold, very icy. It has a very just cold kind of synth sound all the way through, very much 1981. A lot of it sounds like it could be off of a video game soundtrack or something like that. A lot of keyboard synths are going on here. But it's all right. I think that the album's good. It's a decent album. It's not blowing me away or anything, and I definitely don't put it up there with the Buzzcocks Singles Going Steady, but glad to finally have the UK version of this nonetheless. And that's going to do it for this round of Vinyl Finds. I'm Robert Fitton. Thank you so much for watching. Next, I'm off on an adventure in Chicago to go to some record stores there that I've never been to before, along with some other vinyl community YouTubers. And I will have a full report of the records that I acquire, if I acquire any, from that trip in my next video. So hopefully you'll check that out, and I will see you then. Thanks again for watching.